They say that your wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. It is the one day where the world slows down, and for just a few hours, everything revolves around love, commitment, and the people who truly care about you. You spend months choosing the perfect venue, tasting the cakes, making sure the flowers are just right, and carefully curating the guest list. You invite the people who have been there through your highest highs and your lowest lows. You trust that they will stand by your side when you take that massive leap into the next chapter of your life. But what happens when the people you love the most, the ones you considered your absolute inner circle, decide that a rack of ribs and a cold beer are more important than your vows? What happens when you realize that to them, your milestone moment was nothing more than an inconvenience? My name is Julian, and until a few months ago, I believed I had the perfect life. I had a beautiful fiancée named Clara, a stable career, and a group of friends I would have taken a bullet for. We called ourselves the Syndicate, a tight-knit group of 6 guys who had been inseparable since our university days. We had been through everything together: breakups, career changes, late-night road trips, and endless celebrations. When I asked my best friend Marcus to be my best man, he practically teared up. He hugged me, slammed his hand on my back, and promised that he and the rest of the guys would make sure my wedding was the event of the century. I believed him. I really did. As the months ticked closer to the big day, the stress began to build, as it always does with wedding planning. Clara and I were funding most of the ceremony ourselves. We didn't have an endless supply of cash, so every single dollar mattered. The venue we chose was a breathtaking, rustic barn overlooking a serene lake. It wasn't cheap, and because of the strict catering rules, we had to pay a hefty price per head. Every single seat at that reception represented our hard work, our savings, and our sacrifice. 2 weeks before the wedding, I reached out to Marcus and the rest of the group, Leo, David, Ryan, and Sam, to confirm their final attendance. Everyone enthusiastically clicked "Going" on the digital RSVP link. Marcus even texted me separately. "Bro, wouldn't miss it for the world. Get ready for the wildest night of your life." That text message would later haunt me. The morning of the wedding arrived, filled with a mixture of nervous energy and pure excitement. The sky was a flawless, piercing blue without a single cloud in sight. It was the kind of weather people pray for on their wedding day. I stood in front of the mirror in the groom's suite, adjusting my tie, my hands shaking slightly. I looked out the window and saw the rows of white chairs set up on the immaculate green grass facing the lake. Everything was perfect. But as the clock ticked closer to the ceremony start time, a strange, uneasy feeling began to settle deep in my stomach. The groom's suite was supposed to be buzzing with energy. It was supposed to be filled with the laughter of my best friends, the clinking of glasses, and the usual playful mockery that comes with getting married. Instead, it was dead silent. The only person in the room with me was my younger cousin Leo, who was serving as a junior usher. "Hey, Leo," I said, checking my watch for the 10th time. It was 3:15 p.m. The ceremony was scheduled to begin promptly at 4 p.m. "Have you seen Marcus or the guys out there yet? They should have been here an hour ago for the pre-wedding photos." Leo looked up from his phone, a slightly uncomfortable expression crossing his face. No, Julian. I haven't seen them yet. Maybe they're stuck in traffic." Grabbed my phone and called Marcus. It rang all the way to voicemail. I tried David, voicemail. I tried Ryan. It didn't even ring. It went straight to an automated message saying the user was unavailable. A cold sweat began to break out across the back of my neck. These were the men who were supposed to be standing right next to me at the altar. They were the ones who were supposed to keep me calm, to hand me the rings, to share in this monumental moment. Where on earth were they? By 3:45 p.m., the guests were arriving in droves. Through the window, I could see Clara's family, my extended relatives, our colleagues, and old childhood friends taking their seats. But one specific sect, the highway can get pretty backed up on a Saturday afternoon. "Yeah, traffic," I muttered to myself, trying to swallow the lump forming in my throat. That must be it. Ion of the crowd remained glaringly, painfully empty. The front 2 rows on the groom's side, reserved specifically for my closest friends and their partners, were completely vacant. 10 empty seats. 10 expensive plates of food waiting in the kitchen. My phone buzzed in my hand. My heart leaped into my throat as I looked down, expecting a frantic text from Marcus saying they had gotten into a minor fender bender or had lost track of time. Instead, it was a notification from Instagram Because I was so wrapped up in the pre-wedding chaos, I hadn't been checking social media, but for some reason, intuition told me to open the app. I clicked on Marcus's profile. There, prominently displayed on his Instagram story, posted just 20 minutes prior, was a video. The video showed a sun-drenched backyard. Music was blaring in the background, some upbeat rock song. In the center of the frame stood a massive, state-of-the-art smoker grill, billowing sweet, thick smoke into the air. The camera panned around, revealing a beautifully manicured lawn, a sparkling swimming pool, and a massive outdoor bar stocked with top-shelf liquor. And there they were. Marcus was holding a long pair of tongs, flipping an enormous slab of ribs, wearing a custom apron that read, "The Grill Master." Standing right next to him, holding red plastic cups and laughing hysterically, were David, Ryan, Sam, and Leo. Their wives and girlfriends were lounging on outdoor couches, sunbathing and sipping mimosas. They weren't stuck in traffic. They hadn't suffered an emergency. They were at a backyard barbecue. Marcus looked directly into the camera, raised his drink, and shouted, "To the ultimate weekend. No schedules, no rules, just pure smoke and good vibes." I stared at the screen, completely paralyzed. The world around me seemed to lose all its sound. The joyous chatter of the wedding guests outside faded into a distant, muffled hum. The blood rushed to my ears, hot and loud. I couldn't breathe. I replayed the video 3 times, hoping against hope that it was an old clip, a throwback from a previous summer. But then I noticed the banner hanging across the fence in the background. It read, "Happy 30th birthday, Marcus." Marcus's birthday wasn't for another week. He had deliberately moved his celebration to the exact same day as my wedding, and the entire group, the men I considered my brothers, had chosen to skip the most important day of my life to eat grilled meat in a backyard. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow to the chest. It was a suffocating, blinding wave of humiliation and grief. They hadn't just declined the invitation, they had RSVP'd, yes, allowed us to pay for their expensive meals, promised to be there, and then completely ghosted me without a word, assuming I would be too distracted to notice until it was over. "Julian, is everything okay?" I looked up to see Clara standing in the doorway of the groom's suite. She looked absolutely ethereal. Her white gown flowed around her like a cloud, and her veil trailed elegantly behind her. She looked like a dream, but her eyes were filled with deep concern. She wasn't supposed to see me before the ceremony, but she had clearly sensed that something was terribly wrong. "They're not coming, Clara," I whispered, my voice cracking. I couldn't even bring myself to show her the video. I felt too ashamed that the people I chose to surround myself with could treat us with such profound contempt. Clara walked over, her eyes widening as she looked at my pale face. She took the phone from my hand and watched the video. I watched her expression shift from confusion to shock and finally to a fiery protective rage. Her jaw tightened and she looked out the window at the empty rows where my friends should have been sitting. "Those absolute cowards," she hissed, her voice trembling with anger. "How could they do this to you, to us, after everything we've done for them?" She was right. Over the years, I had been the one they called whenever they needed help. When David lost his job, I spent 3 weeks rewriting his resume and utilizing my network to land him an interview at my company. When Ryan was moving across the state, I spent an entire weekend lifting heavy furniture into a moving truck, while everyone else suddenly found themselves too busy. I had lent them money, supported their businesses, and always, without fail, shown up for their milestones. And this was my reward, to be cast aside for a casual Saturday afternoon barbecue. "Do you want to call it off?" Clara asked softly, kneeling down in front of me and taking my cold hands in hers. "We can postpone. We can figure something out. I don't want you to go through this day feeling broken." I looked into Clara's eyes, and in that moment, a profound shift occurred inside me. The initial shock and sadness began to evaporate, replaced by a cold, hard, and unyielding resolve. Why should I ruin my beautiful bride's day because of 5 pathetic, selfish boys? Why should I let their staggering disrespect cast a shadow over our love? They wanted to choose a barbecue over my wedding. Fine, let them have their barbecue, but they were going to learn that actions have consequences. "No," I said, my voice steadying, a dark spark igniting in my chest. "We are not postponing anything. We are going to walk out there. We are going to get married, and we are going to have the most incredible night of our lives. But tomorrow, things change." Clara looked at me, seeing the sudden shift in my demeanor. She nodded, a fierce smile touching her lips. "Okay, let's do it." The ceremony was beautiful, though a bittersweet ache remained. When the officiant asked who held the rings, my cousin Leo stepped forward, doing his best to fill the shoes of the 5 men who should have been standing there. The guests noticed the empty rows, of course. Whispers rippled through the crowd, but I kept my eyes locked onto Clara. I focused entirely on her vows, and on the future we were building together. But during the reception, as everyone else was drinking champagne and dancing, I sat at the head table, staring at the 5 completely empty place settings directly in front of me. The expensive steak and seafood dinners we had paid for sat under warming trays in the kitchen, completely wasted. Hundreds of dollars down the drain, accompanied by a priceless amount of disrespect. I pulled out my phone beneath the table. I opened Instagram again. Marcus had posted another story. They were all in the pool now, completely intoxicated, singing and shouting. They hadn't sent a single text apologizing for their absence. No, hey man, sorry we couldn't make it. Nothing. They thought they were untouchable. They thought I was the soft, dependable Julian who would just swallow his pride, accept a half-hearted apology next week, and move on. They didn't know me at all. As the night drew to a close, and Clara and I were driven away to our hotel, I didn't think about the beautiful flowers or the wonderful speeches. I sat in the back of the car, staring into the darkness of the highway, formulating a plan. It wasn't going to be an angry text message. It wasn't going to be a dramatic confrontation where I screamed and shouted. No, that would give them too much satisfaction. They would just call me dramatic or sensitive. True revenge is a dish best served cold, meticulously prepared, and delivered at the exact moment they think they've gotten away with everything. I was going to dismantle their comfortable little world, piece by piece, and I was going to use the exact things they valued most to do it. The Monday after the wedding, my phone finally rang. It was Marcus. I let it ring for a few seconds before picking up, keeping my voice entirely neutral, devoid of any anger or resentment. "Hey Julian, man." Marcus's voice boomed through the speaker, dripping with a forced, overly casual friendliness. "Congratulations, brother. You're a married man. Sorry we couldn't make it out there on Saturday, man. Things just got completely crazy on our end. You know how it is. Marcus's 30th only happens once, and the guys surprised me with this massive setup. By the time we realized what time it was way too late to drive all the way out to the venue. I hope the night was great, though." Listen to him. He didn't even have the decency to invent a plausible lie. He admitted, without an ounce of shame, that they simply chose his party over my wedding because they lost track of time. "It's completely fine, Marcus," I said, my tone smooth and relaxed. "I completely understand. A 30th birthday is a huge milestone. We had a great time, and honestly, the venue handled everything perfectly. Don't worry about it at all." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. Marcus was clearly caught off guard. He had undoubtedly prepared himself for an argument, for me to yell at him or demand answers. By denying him that conflict, I instantly disarmed him. "Oh, wow, awesome, man," Marcus said, sounding incredibly relieved. "You're a legend, Julian. Seriously. The guys were a little worried you'd be pissed, but I told them you're the most chill guy we know. Let's get together for drinks sometime soon, okay? My treat." "Absolutely," I replied, a cold smile spreading across my face. "Let's definitely do that." I hung up the phone. They were worried I'd be pissed. They knew exactly what they had done. They knew it was a vile, disrespectful move, but they had relied entirely on my historical tendency to keep the peace to get away with it. They thought they were in the clear. They had no idea that the chess pieces were already being set on the board. To understand how I executed my plan, you need to understand the dynamics of our group and what each of these men valued most. They weren't just a random group of friends. Our lives were deeply intertwined financially, professionally, and socially. Let's start with Marcus. Marcus was a partner in a boutique digital marketing firm. He was a guy who obsessed over his professional reputation and his image. He desperately wanted to land a massive municipal marketing contract with the city, a contract that would solidify his firm's status and net him a multi-million-dollar payout over the next 5 years. What Marcus didn't realize was that the head of the city's selection committee happened to be my maternal uncle, Arthur. Arthur and I were incredibly close, and he had routinely asked me for my thoughts on various local businesses applying for city partnerships. Then there was David. David worked as a senior financial analyst at the corporation where I served as the director of operations. In fact, David reported directly to one of my closest corporate allies, a man who owed his career advancement to a recommendation I had made a year prior. David was currently angling for a major promotion to vice president of regional risk management. He thought he had it in the bag. Ryan and Sam were business partners. They owned a trendy, upscale craft brewery and gastropub in the heart of the city. They had poured all their savings into it, but like many new restaurants, they were operating on razor-thin margins. They relied heavily on corporate events, private parties, and high-profile catering gigs to keep their heads above water. Over the past year, I had single-handedly directed 3 massive corporate holiday parties and 4 retirement dinners to their establishment, effectively generating over 30% of their annual revenue. And finally, there was Leo. Leo was a luxury real estate agent who traded entirely on exclusivity and word-of-mouth referrals. He loved showing off his expensive lifestyle on social media, pretending to be a self-made mogul, when, in reality, almost all his high-net-worth clients came from introductions made by my wife Clara's wealthy family. They had built their successes, their comfort, and their futures on the foundation of my generosity and my network. They had used me as a stepping stone, assuming that my kindness was a weakness. They thought they could bite the hand that fed them and suffer zero repercussions. I spent the next 3 weeks behaving exactly as I always had. I interacted with their social media posts, chatted in our group text, and played the part of the happy, carefree newlywed. I wanted them completely comfortable. I wanted them to believe that the wedding incident was ancient history, completely forgotten. But behind the scenes, I was quietly turning the keys, unlocking the mechanisms that would bring their world crashing down. I didn't need to lie. I didn't need to forge documents or do anything illegal. All I had to do was stop protecting them. All I had to do was tell the absolute, unvarnished truth to the right people. The storm was fully gathered. It was time to let it rain. The first domino to tip belonged to David. It was a Tuesday morning at the office. I was sitting in my executive suite, sipping my coffee, when a knock came at my door. It was Harrison, the VP of Human Resources, holding a manila folder. Behind him stood the corporate VP to whom David reported. "Julian, do you have a minute?" Harrison asked, his face grave. "We're doing the final evaluations for the upcoming Vice President of Risk Management position. David is one of the top candidates on paper, but we always do a final, informal peer and leadership review before making the announcement. Since you work closely with his department and have known him personally for years, we wanted to get your candid assessment of his character, his reliability, and his integrity. In the past, I would have given David a glowing, passionate recommendation. I would have swept his flaws under the rug, highlighted his strengths, and practically guaranteed him the job. I looked Harrison dead in the eye. I took a slow sip of my coffee, set it down, and sighed with a perfectly orchestrated expression of deep regret. "Harrison, this is incredibly difficult for me to say, because David and I have a long personal history," I began, my voice filled with a faux sorrowful weight. "But if you are asking for my professional assessment regarding his leadership capabilities and integrity, I cannot, in good conscience, recommend him for a high-level executive position." Harrison sharpened his gaze, opening his notepad. "Oh? Can you elaborate, Julian?" "An executive in risk management requires absolute reliability, extreme accountability, and the ability to honor commitments under pressure," I said calmly. "Recently, I witnessed a situation where David demonstrated a profound lack of basic accountability and structural integrity. He made a high-level commitment, allowed substantial financial resources to be allocated based on his word, and then completely abandoned that commitment at the absolute last minute without a single word of warning, simply because a more amusing, low-effort alternative presented itself. If he handles his personal commitments with that level of flippancy and disregard for financial waste, I shudder to think how he would handle millions of dollars in corporate risk management when things get difficult." Harrison nodded slowly, writing down every single word. "That is incredibly concerning, Julian. We cannot have a VP who abandons ship when a better offer comes along. Thank you for your honesty. This changes things significantly." 2 days later, David received an email informing him that the company had chosen to hire an external candidate for the vice president position. Not only did he lose the promotion, but because of the sudden shift in executive perception, his current projects were placed under a microscope. He was locked into his mid-level position with zero upward mobility remaining. The second domino fell later that afternoon. I called my uncle Arthur, the head of the city selection committee. We chatted about the family, about the wedding, and eventually, the topic turned to business. "Hey, Julian," Arthur said. "That marketing firm, Nexus Media, run by your buddy Marcus. They're in the final 3 for the city's multi-million-dollar revitalization campaign. I remember you mentioning him a while back. Should I pull some strings and lock them in?" "Uncle Arthur," I said, my voice dropping to a serious tone. I'm glad you brought that up. I need to ask you to do the exact opposite. Strip them from the running entirely. Arthur sounded surprised. Really? I thought he was your best friend. He was, I replied, but I recently discovered some devastating information regarding his operational ethics. He is a man who presents a beautiful, polished exterior, but completely lacks substance and respect for contracts. He recently misallocated a massive amount of personal funds dedicated to an event, ghosted the organizers entirely, and celebrated the financial loss he caused to others openly on public platforms. If he handles a personal associate like that, he will absolutely mismanage public tax dollars and leave the city stranded if a shinier project catches his attention. Arthur's voice hardened. Say no more, Julian. The city cannot afford a public relations nightmare or a flaky contractor. They're out. The next morning, Marcus received an official letter from the city council. Nexus Media had been disqualified from the bidding process due to failure to meet character and reliability benchmarks during background compliance. The contract went to his fiercest competitor. Marcus's firm lost tens of thousands of dollars spent on the bidding process alone, and their professional reputation in the city took a massive, quiet hit. But I wasn't done yet. The third and fourth dominoes were next. Ryan and Sam's Brewery was the next target. As director of operations at my firm, I held the final sign-off authority for all corporate catering, networking events, and regional conferences. For the past 2 years, I had quietly directed all our business to their establishment. I had convinced our board that their high prices were worth it because of their exceptional service. On Friday morning, my corporate events coordinator entered my office with a stack of booking requests. Julian, we have the annual Q3 regional conference coming up next month. Usually we book Ryan and Sam's Brewery for the 3-day catering and VIP dinner. It's a $25,000 booking. Do you want me to approve the deposit? I reached out, took the paperwork, and neatly slid it into the paper shredder beside my desk. The machine hummed, instantly chewing the documents into tiny, illegible strips of confetti. The coordinator gasped. Julian? Change of plans, I said smoothly. We've received complaints regarding the consistency of their management. We are moving all corporate accounts away from their venue effective immediately. Book the downtown convention center instead, and let the regional branches know that Ryan and Sam's Brewery is no longer an approved vendor for company expense accounts. With that single move, I instantly erased nearly a third of their predictable monthly revenue, but I didn't stop there. I contacted 3 other operations managers at neighboring firms, men I had built strong professional relationships with over the years. I casually mentioned over a lunch meeting that Ryan and Sam's establishment had begun experiencing severe logistical reliability issues, and that we had pulled our contracts to protect our corporate interests. Terrified of wasting their own budgets, those companies immediately pulled their business as well. Within a week, Ryan and Sam's beautifully designed gastropub went from a bustling corporate hotspot to a ghost town. Their weekend reservations plummeted. The silence in their dining room was deafening. Finally, it was time to handle Leo, the slick, high-end real estate agent. I sat down with Clara on Sunday evening. She had been watching my calculated moves with a sense of quiet awe and absolute satisfaction. Clara, darling, I said, handing her a glass of wine. Isn't your Aunt Beatrice looking to sell her multi-million-dollar estate in the hills next month? And didn't she mention she was considering using Leo as her listing agent? Clara smiled beautifully, a dangerous glint in her eyes. She was. Leo has been hounding her for weeks, begging for the listing. It would give him a massive 6-figure commission. Why don't you give Aunt Beatrice a call? I suggested softly. Just a casual chat. Let her know about Leo's recent time management issues. Tell her how he treats people who trust him. Ask her if she really wants to trust a man with that level of character to handle the most valuable asset in her portfolio. Clara didn't hesitate. She picked up her phone right there at the dinner table. Aunt Beatrice was an old money matriarch who valued class, respect, and tradition above all else. When Clara gently explained to her how Leo had skipped our wedding, an event he was formally expected to assist with, to lounge in a pool at a backyard barbecue, Beatrice was absolutely appalled. How utterly vulgar, Beatrice snorted through the phone. If he cannot respect a sacred marriage ceremony, he certainly will not respect my estate. I will find an agent with actual breeding. Not only did Leo lose Aunt Beatrice's listing, but Beatrice immediately called her entire social circle, the elite, wealthy homeowners of the city's most exclusive neighborhood. Within 48 hours, Leo found himself completely blacklisted by the very demographic that funded his lavish lifestyle. His phone stopped ringing. His inbox remained completely empty. The dominoes had all fallen. Every single one of them had been struck by the invisible force of their own actions. They had thought their betrayal at my wedding was an isolated incident with no real-world consequences. They didn't realize that their entire lives were supported by the very man they had chosen to humiliate, and now the foundation was entirely gone. It took exactly 3 weeks for the full weight of the collapse to sink in for them. Because I had been so quiet, so nice, and so utterly unbothered on the phone, they didn't suspect me at first. They thought they were just experiencing a bizarre, catastrophic run of terrible luck. Marcus lost his city contract. David lost his promotion. Ryan and Sam lost their corporate clients. Leo lost his entire wealthy network. It seemed like a cosmic curse had suddenly struck the syndicate. But eventually they started talking to each other. They started connecting the dots. They realized that every single failure, every single closed door, and every single financial loss led back to one common denominator: me. It was a Saturday afternoon, exactly 1 month after my wedding day, when my phone began to blow up. The group chat, which had been relatively quiet, suddenly exploded with notifications. Marcus: Julian, we need to talk, right now. David: are you at home? We're coming over. Ryan: man, what did you do to our business? Nope. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked out to my front porch, sat down in a comfortable wicker chair, poured myself a glass of iced tea, and waited. Clara sat right next to me, holding a book, a serene smile on her face. 20 minutes later, a large black SUV pulled up to the curb in front of my house. The doors flew open, and out stepped Marcus, David, Ryan, Sam, and Leo. They didn't look like the confident, laughing men from the Instagram video anymore. They looked exhausted, stressed, and visibly disheveled. Marcus's shoulders were slumped. David looked pale, dark circles bruising the skin beneath his eyes. Ryan and Sam looked like men who hadn't slept in a week, haunted by the specter of bankruptcy. They marched up my driveway, stopping at the bottom of the porch steps. I looked down at them, completely relaxed, taking a slow sip of my iced tea. Julian! Marcus shouted, his voice cracking with a mixture of anger and desperation. What the hell did you do? Did you blackball my firm with the city council? My Uncle Arthur said you told him I was an ethical nightmare. We lost the contract, Julian. It ruined us. And me! David stepped forward, his fists clenched. Harrison and HR practically told me I didn't get the VP job because of a negative character assessment from you. I've been working toward that promotion for 3 years, Julian. You killed my career. Ryan slammed his hand against the porch railing. Our brewery is empty, Julian. All the corporate accounts just vanished overnight. The events coordinator said you ordered our contracts to be shredded. We can't even pay our rent next month. Why are you doing this to us? I sat there in complete, unyielding silence. I didn't interrupt them. I didn't get angry. I just watched them vent their desperation, letting their words hang in the warm afternoon air. When they finally ran out of breath, standing there panting, looking at me for answers, I set my glass down on the table with a soft, deliberate clink. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, and looked at each of them in turn. You want to know why? I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm, sharp as a razor blade. It's funny that you're all so loud today. You have so much to say. Your voices work perfectly fine when your wallets are hurting, when your careers are failing, and when your businesses are collapsing. I stood up slowly, stepping to the edge of the porch, towering over them. But tell me, where were these voices 4 weeks ago? I asked, my gaze locking onto Marcus. Where was your voice on a Saturday afternoon at 4 p.m., Marcus, when I was standing in a groom's suite, watching the clock tick past the ceremony time, wondering where my best man was? The 5 of them instantly froze. The anger on their faces vanished, replaced by a sudden, chilling realization. They looked at each other, the color draining from their cheeks. Where were your voices when my beautiful bride was crying in my arms because she thought our wedding day was ruined? I continued, my voice rising slightly, dripping with absolute contempt. Where were your voices when we sat at a head table, looking at 5 empty chairs, staring at hundreds of dollars of wasted food that we sacrificed our savings to pay for? Julian, look. We apologized for that, Marcus stammered, his arrogance completely shattered. It was my birthday, man. We got caught up. It was a mistake. RSVP'd, yes, knowing damn well you had no intention of showing up, leaving me to look like a fool in front of my entire family. I stepped down the first porch step, getting right into Marcus's face. You thought I was weak, I whispered. You thought because I am a kind man, because I am a loyal man, that you could treat me like garbage, and I would just smile, accept your pathetic apology, and keep funding your lives. You forgot one very important thing, Marcus. RSVP'd, yes, knowing damn well you had no intention of showing up, leaving me to look like a fool in front of my entire family. I stepped down the first porch step, getting right into Marcus's face. You thought I was weak, I whispered. You thought because I am a kind man, because I am a loyal man, that you could treat me like garbage, and I would just smile, accept your pathetic apology, and keep funding your lives. You forgot one very important thing, Marcus. They had killed him themselves. I didn't destroy your businesses, Ryan, I said softly, stepping back up to the porch. I simply stopped helping you. I told the absolute truth about your character to the people who matter. If the truth about your character destroys your livelihood, then perhaps you should have built a better character. They stood in my driveway for a long time, realizing that there was no negotiation to be had. There was no screaming match that would fix this. There was no apology they could offer that would rebuild the bridge they had burned to ashes. One by one, they turned around, walked back to the SUV, and climbed inside. They drove away, their tires crunching slowly over the gravel, leaving behind a profound, permanent silence. In the months that followed, the landscape of our social circle changed completely. The syndicate was officially dead. Marcus's digital marketing firm never recovered from the loss of the city contract and the hit to his reputation. He was forced to downsize his office, lay off half his staff, and take a massive pay cut just to keep the doors open. He no longer posts about his lavish lifestyle on social media. His custom apron, the grill master, is likely buried deep in a closet somewhere, a painful reminder of the most expensive barbecue he will ever eat. David remained stuck in his mid-level analyst position. A few months later, unable to handle the awkwardness of working in an environment where his executive advancement was permanently blocked, he resigned and took a lower-paying job at a minor firm across town. Ryan and Sam managed to save their brewery from complete bankruptcy, but they had to sell a majority stake to a ruthless venture capital group just to stay afloat. They are no longer the proud owners. They are essentially employees in their own establishment, working long, grueling hours under a management team that watches their every move. Leo moved out of the luxury real estate market entirely. Without the backing of Clara's family network, he couldn't compete in the high-end neighborhoods. He now works as a standard rental agent, showing modest apartments to college students, a far cry from the multi-million-dollar estates he used to boast about. As for me and Clara, our life has never been better. The money we lost on those 10 empty wedding plates was a small price to pay for the ultimate clarity. It was a cleansing fire that purged our lives of parasites, cowards, and fake friends. We filled our inner circle with people who actually care, people who show up, who value commitment, and who understand the weight of loyalty. Looking back on that fateful Saturday afternoon, I don't feel anger anymore. I don't feel bitterness. I look at the beautiful wedding album sitting on our coffee table, and when I see the photos of the empty seats in the crowd, I don't see a tragedy. I see a beautiful, divine intervention. They thought they were skipping a wedding to enjoy a casual Saturday afternoon. They didn't realize they were choosing a rack of ribs over their entire futures. Life has a beautiful, poetic way of balancing the scales. When you choose to treat people who support you with contempt, do not be surprised when the support disappears, and you are left to face the cold world entirely on your own. Treat people with respect. Honor your commitments, because you never truly know which bridge you are burning until you find yourself stranded on the other side, watching the flames rise, with nothing left to eat but the ashes of your own choices.